Hi everyone, it's Jung here. Today I'm sharing two cards that I made with the Spellbinders September 2019 large die of the month, and it's called Game of Gnomes. You'll get all these dies, and included is dice to make a large mushroom, two smaller mushrooms. You can have your gnome or gnomes standing or sitting. There's a squirrel with an acorn, a little sign that the gnomes can hold, and little pieces of grass. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I went through my cardstock scraps and picked out the colors I wanted, and I trimmed them down to size so I can fit as many dies on my cutting plate as once as possible. You're going to want to die cut the mushroom caps twice. I am going to be cutting it out of the red cardstock first, and I'm going to be using the outline piece and also the little inner pieces that cut out the tiny little holes. And then I'm going to be cutting out on the white cardstock the pieces for the mushroom stalk and for the little ridged bottom side of the mushroom cap. And I also have a little bit of room left on my cutting mat, so I'm going to die cut the acorn. Okay, since a lot of the dies have two pieces or more in one, I'm going to be die cutting the acorn again because I want to cut the acorn cap in dark brown. These are the outlines of the mushroom caps that I'm going to be die cutting in white. That little long piece, it'll be for the ridge of the underside of the mushroom cap. You'll see it when I put it together. And then I'm going to cut out those squirrel pieces in gray and the gnome's hat in red. And that tiny little piece I'm going to cut out in silver is the belt buckle. And then I'm going to cut out one of the mushroom stalks for the little mushrooms in white. From black cardstock, I'm going to be cutting out the belt, and that's attached to the die with the hat on it. I'll be cutting out the boots and the eyes. And then that piece right there is for the beard. I'm going to cut it from white cardstock. And then I'm going to cut another mushroom stalk for the little mushrooms from white cardstock. And this piece right here is for the sign. There's the little outer portion and an inner portion. For the outer portion, I'm going to be cutting it from brown cardstock, and then the inner part I will be cutting from white. And then this light blue piece is for the arms and the shirt, and the pink is going to be for the face and hands, and that deep purple is going to be for the legs. The die with the beard also has eyebrows on it, as well as the belt buckle, which I mentioned before. For the rim of the gnome's hat, I'm going to be cutting it from white cardstock, and again the die is attached to the dies with all the hat and the belt on it. I will also be cutting the gnome's mouth from the pink cardstock, and then I'm going to start cutting out some of the grass pieces from light green and dark green cardstock. I also need to cut an extra eye from black cardstock for the squirrel. Okay, so now all my pieces are cut. I'm going to start laying them out. This is how you put together the big mushroom. And then these are how you put together the little mushrooms. It's pretty easy once you lay everything out. I decided that I wanted to add a little bit of dimension to my mushrooms, or all of my die cut pieces. So I'm just going to be using my Copic markers to add a little bit of color and shading. And so this is the bottom of the mushroom cap, and you can't really tell from the video, but the die adds a whole bunch of embossed lines just like you would see on the bottom of a mushroom. So for the mushroom stalks and the bottom of the mushroom cap that I die cut in white, I'm using a bit of warm gray Copic colors, and I believe I used W1, WOO, and then a little bit of the blender. And that way I just created some depth and shadows. And then for the reds, I believe I used R35 and R46 maybe. Okay, let's go ahead and start assembly of the mushrooms. On the back of this red piece, I'm going to add some liquid glue. And then I'm going to attach it to the white mushroom base that we die cut. Now, they are going to line up perfectly because if you remember, we used the same outer die to die cut them. Next, I'm going to glue on the piece that looks like the underside of the mushroom. It's the one that had all the embossed lines on it. And then I'm going to take that thin little red piece and it'll serve as kind of like the border around the top side of the piece that we just glued on. And for the smaller mushroom pieces, we're going to do the same. I'm going to glue on the red piece on top of the white base that we die cut. These two pieces are for the larger mushroom. It's the stalk, and I'm just going to glue them together. For the smaller mushroom pieces, there's only one die to cut the stalks, and you can change it up depending on how close to the edge you glue the mushroom cap. So for this one, I'm gluing it pretty close to the edge so it looks like a long stalk. But on the other one, I'll glue it kind of towards the middle so it looks like a shorter stalk. I placed my mushroom stalk on the larger mushroom to see where I would want it, and then I decided that I needed a little bit more shading, so I'm using my warm gray Copic marker again and adding just a little bit more color before I attach it with some liquid glue. These three pieces are for the squirrel, and just like on the mushrooms, I'm going to add a little bit of shading. I used warm grays for these. Once done with the shading, I'm going to go ahead and start assembly of my squirrel. I'm going to first glue on an eye, and if you remember, I die cut an extra eye from black cardstock. And I'm just going to color in the little tip of the nose with a black marker. Next, I'm going to glue on the leg piece. And then after that, I'll glue on the tail. Okay, so I had assembled my gnome piece and my camera, I guess, stopped recording. So I'm going to show you how I put it together again. And I didn't shade it this time, but for my previous gnome, you can see on the top right, I did add some shading. So on this face piece, I'm going to glue on the eyes first. And then I will glue on the beard. Next, I'm going to work on my shirt and my belt. First, I'm going to glue that little belt buckle piece on. Tweezers are very handy when you're dealing with tiny, tiny little pieces like that. Then I'm going to glue the belt to the shirt. And then while that dries, I'm going to go back to the face. I'm going to glue on the gnome's little nose, and I cut it out from that same pink cardstock. And then I'm going to glue on the mouth. On one of the cards, I left the mouth off because I think it looks cute like that. But on one of them, I kind of tilted the mouth sideways so it looks like he's doing like a lopsided grin. And then I'm going to add the white piece to my little gnome hat. And then I'm going to glue the boots on the legs. There are two leg pieces when you have the gnome sitting down, or there's another piece that comes solid. You can see in the little bowl to the top left of the screen where you would just glue the boots to the bottom of those, and that's like a solid piece of both legs. I'm going to glue the hands to the sleeves. And again, the hands I just cut out from the same pink cardstock as the face. Next, I'm going to glue on the hat. And then I will be gluing on my eyebrows. I die cut them from the white cardstock. When you're dealing with these teeny tiny scraps of cardstock, you definitely want to use your tools to help you. I'm using the crystal katana and then my tweezers, and then I think those are called the backwards tweezers or something along those lines. Next, I'm going to glue on the legs and make it look like he's sitting crisscross applesauce, as they say in my daughter's school. And then I'm going to glue on the arms to the body. And finally, I'm going to be gluing on the head to the body. And for placement, I'm just kind of eyeballing to see what looks good. And here are my little gnomes all finished. You can see the one on the left was shaded, and I added a little bit of pink cheeks with some Copic markers. I also put together the little acorns. There's only two pieces. It's pretty easy to put together. And then I made this background piece. Of course, my camera didn't record it, but I used 3 distress inks. I believe it's Carved Pumpkin, Mermaid Lagoon, and Chip Sapphire. And I glued it onto a card panel or cardstock panel that's about 4 inches by 5 1/4. And then I'm kind of laying everything out, trying to see where I want things to go. And I'm going to make it pretty similar to my first card that I made. I've already attached the big mushroom to the background with liquid glue, and so I'm going to use some foam tape for my smaller mushrooms. The little foam squares to the right are thin foam squares, and the foam circles to my left are a little bit thicker, so it gives a little bit more depth. Okay, now I'm going to mess with the little sign. If you remember, I die cut the bigger square and the little stick from brown cardstock, and then I die cut the smaller square from white cardstock so I can stamp a sentiment in there. And I'm just going to glue that together. And now I'm going to start placing the little grass pieces that I die cut from 2 different colors of green cardstock. I also added some shading with some green Copic markers. You can see my little 2-year-old's hand creep in to grab the gnome. She thinks they're cute. I'm going to give my squirrel a little bit of blush, and then I will attach it to the card with some foam squares. Next, I'll attach the acorn right next to him with a little foam circle. I'm going to go ahead and attach the gnome and the sign with some foam squares as well. And then for a little detail, I'm just going to take my white gel pen and add some highlights. And that is my card done. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and I'll be sure to leave links to my blog post as well as the Spellbinders website in the info bar below. Again, thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day. Bye.